So key attributes here are that 59 is thorn bush. Thorn bush refers to the jeev itself is weak, right? A month of diarrhea will understand that it is actually truly weak. Also, the fact that jeev behaves like a thief, yet it does not know what to do. 60 is associating with a Sadhguru through mind deeds word, like San Samag and PJ, right? 61 is diamond. 64, 64, 5 are the detachment from material objects, murti, anything from here to Pragati Purush without the murti of mind appears like waste. 65 is attachment to Sadguru's constant remembrance of God, just like the flow of water when a fish is immersed in the flow of water. It does not think about where it is, like it is immersed in the water. So in the same way, you should be immersed in the murti of God. 68 is Kijudo tree, right? Like associate with someone who's like a mango tree, even though he's 5 years old, always produces delicious mangoes. Whereas a Kijudo tree, even though it's 1,000 year old, it's unproductive, produces unedible finger-like pods. So associate with someone who is like the Kijudo. Even a Brahmin may be well versed in the 12 holy attributes, but but if he does not understand the manifest form of God, does not recognize the manifest form of God, then he's like the Kijudo, very unproductive. And whoever associates with him will achieve no peace and no happiness. 334, we have Niranjan Swami, we know 336. Most important additional things here are prejudice, or if you have prejudice, one example of that is when people threw stones on Gopalanan Swami's head and burning embers in his jodi. That was due to prejudice. Views of Senior Sadhu Maharaj pleased in the past. Second thing to add, how is Maharaj pleased now is knowing Maharaj is Purushottam and the Sadhu is Akshar, that is explained in G171, and not knowing these two things, it's like life being futile. Pingal Param Ek Ram Ram is also referring to this as well. When we say destroying the casual body, make sure you understand that this second part of it, or one of the additional parts of it, is to become Brahmarup and to sit in Akshardham. So Siddhartha Swami also remarked that the casual body is actually very extremely difficult to control. And then after making one Brahmarup, they are placed in modern service in Akshardham. Right? So you can associate the B with casual body B with after one becomes Brahmarup, placed in modern service in Akshardham. We know that the numbers for avoiding worldly pleasure. So they use human lifespan, 100,000 years, deathbed period, 1,000 years, terminal illness, 100 years. And then we know water mirage is one seated in the chariot of the sun, does not seed water mirages. And then accepting one's guru, nothing new there. 50 years, 4.5 hours was how long Vairat Brahma prayed at the holy feet of Maharaj for before he finally came down onto the earth. Cooling the jeev, there is the Satpura power of the Satpura is also in the cooling of the jeev. Right, so without the Satpurush, nothing is possible. Close association with the Satpurush. One has done nothing until associated with the Satpurush. So that is cooling that is part of cooling the jeev. And then the mind is easily deviated by these forces. So when is it not deviated? When it has served the pure, right? One who has served the pure becomes free of base instincts, and one whose desires have been subdued, right? That is someone whose mind is not deviated. So that is one of the things to note. Vishayas and bondage, we know the three types of Vishayas and bondage and the three examples. Maharaj kept the sadhu and then this is important. Maharaj kept the sadhu on this earth to give bliss to the devotees of Surat and to have the pathway of liberation open for countless of these different devotees. So in Muktanan Swami's Kirtan, at the end, he says that God resides in such a sadhu, and then he does four things: gives darshan, talks, meets, looks intently, and thus he gives bliss in many ways. Okay, so connect the fact that he kept the sadhu onto this earth to give bliss to spiritual aspirants to the four things that he does. He resides in such a sadhu, he gives his darshan, talks, meets, and looks attentively, and he gives his bliss in many ways. Maharaj enforces moral and spiritual codes. Kalyani 12 is like a system. 12 is systematic. The system is that he gives moral codes and conduct. That's how you can associate with it. In K12, Maharaj says that Maharaj has come onto this earth, but he does liberation by enforcing the observance of spiritual conducts and codes of conduct. That is the objective of the codes, is to do liberation. They are meant for liberation. And then we know the importance of unity. We know that in unity, some may not have anyone compatible for companionship. Some may be very hypersensitive, like pus-filled boils. They can't be easily guided. So therefore, in these tens of groups of sadhus, only stay with those who are compatible. Right? If those are hypersensitive, like pus-filled boils, you need to ignore them. And in the groups of tens of sadhus, one should only stay with those that are compatible to maintain unity and harmony. Thorn bush, jiva is eroded by all these different worldly pleasures. It's like a thorn bush is eroded or scraped by the sand, right? The jiva is eroded by these worldly pleasures. And this thorn bush, right? This thorn bush is what we were talking about. Jiva is seated like a thief, but does not understand his own knowledge about his own nature. Does not have any need, does not feel the need for God in the sadhu, right? And the jiva desires much, but if it suffers a month of diarrhea, it will truly realize how weak it is. So the jiva is weak. It needs to realize that it is weak. And the jiva seated like a thief, like a thief tries to steal, tries to get what he wants, but he does not have knowledge about what his true own nature is. So the jiva is very ignorant in that sense. Right? There was also an example where a Muslim mounted a bullock and took a stick and shouted, "Who should I fight and who should I not fight?" Because he didn't know. He didn't know, was he a soldier or a warrior. In the same way, this is the example of a jeep. Right? Doesn't know his true nature or true identity. Does not feel the need for God or the great sadhu. Right? And we have Sansamagam Kiji associated with the sadhu with thought word deed. Then Saharanpur 17, 17 is the diamond, and we can know this by the 7 looks like an 8, and the 8 is sort of, you can think of 8 as like an infinity sign, and it looks like a diamond. So that is the diamond has Saharanpur 17. We know that the murti, anything from here to Prakriti Purush appears like waste without the murti of Maharaj. And this understanding is like the great sadhu. A great sadhu knows that has this understanding. And if a person does not know this, right, then he becomes infatuated with the material object. But if a person knows that except for the murti of Maharaj, everything from here to Prakriti Purush appears like waste, then he does not become infatuated with these material objects. So Sarvani Vasananand, he understood this deeply, so that is why his focus remained unattached to these worldly objects. So then he said, then with what material worldly objects should I perform the worship and service of Maharaj? And then said, no need to have any material worldly objects, just look at the murti. So then Sarvani Vasananand said, if I tell that to anyone, then he will pick up my bed and throw it on the waste. That is how hard that other people will think this concept actually is. And we know that when one becomes separated from such a sadhu, one should feel pain comparable to have fallen into hell. So if such a pain is not felt, then the jiva is not truly attached to the sadhu. So if you become separated from the sadhu, right? Separated from the sadhu, you have fallen into hell, right? Separated from the sadhu, think of fallen into hell. And then if the other one is if he forgets God for a fraction of a second, he feels as if his head has been split open. So forgetting God, right? Forgetting God is a mental thing, right? It's a mental thing. So you can associate that mental thing with the head. Right? So if he forgets God for a fraction of a second, head feels as if his head has been split open. But if he physically becomes separated, then he actually physically falls into hell. Right? And if this pain is not felt, then one has truly not been attached to the Sadguru. And without attachment, the jiva becomes engrossed in the world, pleasure's body. And then the other keynote here is in constant remembrance. We also have a warning against fault finding. So the way to remember this is in constant remembrance. We like to remember faults, right? We like to remember faults. So that is the warning against fault finding. That's the relationship you can keep there, right? Like to remember faults. So one who does not know this fact and what fact is this referring to? That attach yourself to the Satpurusha and constant remembrance of God. Is that just as a fish moves, swims, and acts in water, I do everything immersed in the form of Maharaj. Guru Nanak Swami does everything in the form of Maharaj. So one who does not know this will attribute faults to even the great sadhu. Right, and one who does this will not attain liberation even in tens of millions of years. Right? That is a fact. That is a fact. Associate with someone who is like the God realized sadhu, who is like the 5-year-old mango tree. I mean, no matter how versed in the Shastras he is, right, a Brahmin may possess 12 holy attributes. But if he does not know the manifest form of God, he is like the Kijro, 1,000-year Kijro tree, inedible finger-like pods. Okay, so recognize a true devotee of God, who is like the mango tree, associate with him, so it becomes the last birth. But without meeting such a God-realized sadhu, you may encounter other of these gurus, but the only thing that they will do is cause more harm and countless more births and suffering. Supreme value of satsang is that Maharaj is supreme, the place is supreme, sadhu is supreme. If misery still arise, despite then they can't be removed, because these 3 things will not allow any misery to occur. And so going to Vantali Swami says, whenever I walk on this path, I actually remember God, because God and all these Maharaj and all these senior sadhus walk here. So that's why I remember them. And this is with the supreme value of satsang. I'm talking about the glory of satsang, because he's doing smruti. He's remembering the glory right? When Swami is walking to Mantal, he's remembering the glory of satsang. So then Kashiram says that one who has Maharaj's darshan can recall, but what about one who has never had Maharaj's darshan? How is he able to recall? So then Swami says that Maharaj actually has not gone anywhere. He is present. He gives us darshan talks and gives us much happiness in this way. But while there is ignorance, this is not understood. So in this, he is saying that Maharaj is present through the sadhu. And where is he saying this? He is saying this in the supreme value. Okay, so the glory of the satsang is such that Maharaj is ever present in the sadhu. So he says that Maharaj has not gone away. He is always present in the sadhu. He gives us darshan and gives us much happiness, talks and gives much. So three things: darshan, talks, and gives happiness. And the other one it was talks, meets, that gives darshan, looks intently, and gives bliss in many ways. Right? That was kept as sadhu on this earth. Incomparable glory. Swami says to Kalyan Bhai, he says to Kalyan Bhai, the glory of the satsang can't be understood, can't be described. And even if it is described, it is not believed. And so in 267, Maharaj says, I myself cannot comprehend the limits of my own greatness. How will others be able to comprehend? And then there's a stroke that says that Kapil Dev showed much power, but he liberated only his mother. Right? So even in satsang, even women devotees, even there's immense power of even devotees and sadhus. So the glory of the satsang cannot be comprehended. That is the purpose in 372. So that's sort of the main additional details that we want to know. Now we'll go over a few concepts here. So in again in Kutch, some of the additional key incidents we want to remember, and again in Kutch, is why can't we see Sandasji was when Maharaj goes to the storage hut and says, remove all of these different hay bales, and you'll see Sandasji deeply in meditation. Then we have no one lay a hand on fallen possessions when a saint presents Maharaj with a mango that falls beneath the tree. Maharaj says that to never steal and one should never steal. Trees barely grow in that land, so taking fruit even if it is fallen without the owner's possession, it is theft. And so he explains the subtleties of sin. And then Maharaj also explains the glory of Gomukh Ganga here, that if one contemplates on his divine form and his lotus feet, he will attain liberation. All the sins will be burnt away. Muktanand Swami also asks in Kutch that how does one attain knowledge of your divine form? And now you can think of this as again, right? Again, Muktanand Swami is asking, how can one attain knowledge of your divine form again? You can associate that with again. And so Maharaj explains that true knowledge comes through exclusive devotees, right? Following his commands, dharma, detachment. He explains his cosmic nature. Right? True knowledge comes from communion and association with these devotees. And these devotees are ones that follow his commands, sing his deeds constantly, worship his form with dharma, knowledge and detachment. And he explains his own cosmic nature. This Purushottam Gita is this entire discourse on Sankhya Yoga, on dharma, on worship that Maharaj has in Gomukh Ganga. And so this entire series of discourses are called Purushottam Gita. This happens for 15 consecutive days. Maharaj also celebrates the festival of lights in Hamir Sarovar. So again in Kutch is when Maharaj asks, when Muktanand Swami also asks Maharaj that how can we have true knowledge of your form? And festival of lights and in Hamir Sarovar. So Hamir said the devotees and Maharaj, they have a great time together. Maharaj dons white garments, sits beneath a banyan tree. There is a grand procession that is arranged. There are all these musical instruments, devotees coming in from all these different royal villages and playing with Maharaj and having a nice divine time and incident that we were able to see. So in divine incident, Hamir Sarovar, what happens when Maharaj disappears and doesn't rise from the water, and so people think that he has drowned. They are worried about him, but then Maharaj comes again, and then he explains that why are we attributing human faults? Maharaj explains that he is parat, but right, he is beyond worldly qualities and beyond worldly attributes, and so he criticizes them for mourning as if he had drowned like a human. And so he says that elements of nature and consciousness cannot bind him because he is Sarvopari Bhagwan, right? Then we have the entire incident in Gangaram Mao's house where Maharaj leaves because due to Jagjivan Mehta's revenge, due to his fear of his retaliation. Then we have Arab Fatah Muhammad, where Jagjivan goes to Fatah Muhammad. But then even he says that he once saw Swaminarayan and during nightly walks, and he was compelled to dismount his horse and touch his feet. And so he was like, okay, he is not going to help me here. And so then Jagjivan Mall sends the Arab there. He sends a few soldiers there. Soldiers demand Swami to surrender with threats of looting, but Gangadham calmly offers to bring him, but warns that Maharaj refuses to surrender willingly. Then they will have no option but to fight rather than abandon their guest. And so Maharaj cleverly sends to Gangadham to send his word to Fateh Muhammad that, hey, Jagjivan, this is his unauthorized scheme, right? Why did he send these armed followers here? And this sets up the intervention that ultimately resolves the entire crisis. In Dabhan Yagna, we know that Karniba is given darshan. We know that Jamalji's daughter is given darshan. We also know that Pujabai goes to this woman and tells her to say the word of Sonia, and she says that, yeah, if you say God's name, liberation, but yet she still does not say God's name. We have this gathering of devotees and discourses at Hatroli, where Maharaj says that the importance of austerities. He emphasizes that this body is not a means of enjoyment. One should do austerities, but then when he encounters an ascetic who's been fasting for 4 days, when Maharaj talked about the emphasis on tapas and doing form austerities, he says that, yeah, you should do austerities, but he cautioned against excessive austerities. And he says the body should be used as a means of maintaining moksha. And then he said that in Kalyug, you should also take care of your body because that is essential for also doing worship. So he said to do renunciation and austerities, but with an element of caution and not to do excessive amounts of them. Then we have in Ghorasar, right? We have Jalam Singh's daughter, already a devotee of Ram. She developed great devotion towards Maharaj. She had a dream where Ramchandraji appeared and told her that supreme divine Purushottam Bhagavan had manifested with Bhagavan Swaminarayan. And if she associated with him, her ultimate welfare would be assured. So then upon arriving in Ghorasar, the entire village was engulfed in festive celebrations. So this is Jalam Singh's mother. Right? She had a divine dream. And so she was also one of those female devotees that showed immense dedication towards Maharaj. Dalakaja worshipped Maharaj, he adept in all the heart. So this is typical incidents. One of the other ones at the end here is divine vision to Karniba. Like concluding rituals, grace of the Bani Yagna reaches Karniba. So Karniba grants darshan at their own homes, but specifically at Karniba, who he promised she would witness Davan's divine play from her own location. One of the interesting things is that Maharaj also was seen residing in her loft, right? Circled quietly, chanting Swaminarayan Mantra until his awakening. And he had explained that he had directly come from Daban. And so served for him a meal, stayed for 2 days, but then realized that Maharaj had actually been in Daban at that time. So she realized that Maharaj actually appeared to her in another form due to her devotion. And similarly, Maharaj performed different leelas for devotees in Surat, particularly for the daughter of Bhikhari Das, who witnessed the yagna rituals despite being physically distant. There was also the Vaso's grandfather Devi had come to Daman with his daughter Jamuna. But they couldn't reach the yagna due to overwhelming crowds, and so they remained at their housing and lodging. But her heart was so immersed in Maharaj's form that she was granted divine vision, and Maharaj showed all the rituals of the ending ceremony, despite her physical absence from the actual event. Similarly, this similar incident happens when Mayadam Bhatt and Parvatbhai encountered Maharaj on his journey to Ban, and he said he was coming from the yagna and heading to this village before spurring his horse. And so the group then turned back. But then upon reaching that village, they learned that Maharaj hadn't come there and was still residing in the yagna in Daban. And that is how they realized they were blessed with this divine vision of Maharaj. And so this is why, despite the distance, Maharaj showed his darshan and his divine incidents, despite the physical distance that devotees kept. In Bhaktavatsa, one of the main thing is Panchara, right? The fast of abstaining from the 6 states was concluded when devotees and sadhus came to the Zinabai Panchara's house. Zinabai requested permission to serve the festivals, but due to their vows, Maharaj instructed 4 course sorghum bread. And so Alayakaja could not do this, and he vomited. So he was ashamed that he was not able to follow Maharaj's command. But then Maharaj comforted him and declared that tasteless fast has been concluded, and said that even in Gardiyunda, proper care of the body is actually necessary for devotional practice. So he emphasizes austerities, but with an element of caution. The glory of Bhaktavatsala is also Sahasradhara Tirth. So you can think of BS, right? BS, right? Bhaktavatsala, Sahasradhara Tirth. When Maharaj goes to the Ganga west of Garuda, when Maharaj touches this Ganga river, right? Ganga west of Garuda, the Sahasradhara Tirth, right? Lord Sheshnag, thousands would stretch protectively over Maharaj's divine form. And this is the resemblance of the Ganga's devotion. So Maharaj says that this will be known as the Sahasradhara Tirth. And his presence would be forever reside in these waters. So he blessed the site with the power to grant pilgrims the fruits of this great pilgrimage. And then so we have Lala Subha's sister, we have Uday Kunad, we have putting the hand in the tiger when Mata instructs Uday Kunvar's son to inform Lala Subha, and so and his uncle roamed with 50 Arab soldiers, specifically to catch Madaj. And then Lala Subha goes into rage and he sends 30 soldiers to capture Madaj, but then they all go into Samadhi, and then his commander into Samadhi, and then Lala's then the soldiers then report back to their commander that they fight enemy, not God. They fight enemies, not God Himself. Shobharam went blind within 4 days. Another incident, Mayaram Bhatt is another one for BS. As Armada talks about the incredible celibacy of Mayaram Bhatt, that he was widowed at 20, and there was family pressure for him to remarry. But Brahmanans only talked about renunciation. And so he says that even if a seeker has circled the marriage fire thrice, divine will could prevent the fourth step. And so then he had incredible zeal for renunciation. And they understood, the Gauti devotees, that Mayaram's spiritual attainment and detachment made him the worthy guardian of such gifts. Right? That's why Mayaram faithfully embraced lifelong abstinence. Right? So that's why Maharaj is also giving away all these different valuable offerings to symbolize and teach others people how to cultivate the sense of detachment and celibacy. Right? He maintained strict celibacy even among alluring women and held nothing but Maharaj's form in his heart, devoting all gifts to safekeeping in the Lord thing without personal attachment. And then in divine acts and sadhana food, okay, we will stop there.